The Warriors are in Utah tonight, and so is Connor Letourneau, the San Francisco Chronicle's reporter, enterprise reporter, and sometimes beat reporter still. Connor, you ready to go?
Sometimes Warriors beat writer. That should be in my Twitter bio.
Here we go. This is Locked On Warriors.
You are Locked On Warriors, your daily Golden State Warriors podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks for making Locked On Warriors your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get podcasts. This episode is also brought to you by PrizePicks. Check out PrizePicks.com and use promo code NBA. Or go to your app store and download the app today. PrizePicks is daily fantasy made easy. Connor, how is the weather in the Rocky Mountains? People don't realize. I always hear like home court advantage associated with the Denver Nuggets for being 5,000 feet above sea level. They got those signs that kind of intimidate the players in the locker room. But Utah's also up there too, man. I mean, they're right next to the Rocky Mountains themselves. How's the weather? How's the scene? How are you feeling, brother?
Things are good, man. You know, the weather, it's not as cold as you would assume. It's been nice. I had a really good Mexican dinner last night. There's some good Mexican food actually in Utah.
Nice.
And I can't complain. I'm, as we've talked about before on the podcast, I'm just filling in temporarily with Ron Kroichek, and we're kind of nearing the finish line with that. So I'm trying to appreciate every day, on the beat, because this has been 6 years of my life, and it's been an important part of my life, and I've really enjoyed it. And so I'm just kind of appreciating the final days,
Absolutely. And for people who aren't familiar with what you're talking about, you've been the Warriors beat reporter. This is your 6th year now. You've been promoted to being an enterprise reporter covering feature stories and more in-depth journalism, using alternative writing styles from what you traditionally do. But then, of course, stuff happens in life and with organizations. And can you announce who the new beat writer is yet, or is that to be? Are we still keeping that under wraps? Okay, gotcha.
But we do have someone lined up, and
nice.
That person will be starting in the next couple of weeks. And
beautiful.
People are going to like him. It's going to be good.
Excellent. And I hope to have him on at some point in the show in the near future. When we get going, man, I love, we were talking off the air for a long time. I feel like you and I can almost just do a separate podcast, just talking S-bombs on life and sports. But we were talking a lot about like the angles I use for this show and how sometimes they're rather unique from traditional journalism. And one angle, and a huge reason why I find these things and where I get the topics for this show is Twitter and his social media, because I love seeing what fans are talking about and what they're discussing. And I mean, they drive programs like this, and I hope the players know the fans is where they're getting the money from. And one thing yesterday that really took fire briefly, at least in terms of the NBA Twitter chat, is Stephen Curry possibly getting busted for having. I mean, I don't think it's really much of a surprise, and I'm going to share this screen so the YouTube viewers can view it, and I'll try to verbalize as much as possible in a descriptive manner what we're looking at here. But this is Stephen Curry's Twitter account. I believe this was yesterday. And one thing Twitter has done recently is if you decide to post something and then delete it, it still has kind of like a receipt there. Like, so under Stephen Curry's like tweets and replies, it showed that he had tweeted something, or maybe in this case, it shows he liked it, but it also shows he tweeted something underneath the trade reports from yesterday. There were 2 massive trades. We'll talk about it in a second, but a lot of people are joking that this is evidence that Stephen Curry has a burner. He talks about going on Twitter at halftime of games. And then there was a lot of speculation, like why is he specifically, potentially replying to a tweet about the trade? And I think the trade in question here was the Pacers Kings trade. You told me you had not been aware of this. What are your first thoughts?
Yeah, this is all news to me. I know that Steph does not completely manage his own social media accounts.
Interesting.
He has people, as a lot of stars do. He has helpers. Not to say every post is not by him, but he definitely has people beyond himself helping manage his stuff. So maybe that explains it a little bit. I'm not sure, but I will say that in my interactions and my relation, based off my relationship with Steph, never thought of him as being a burner account guy. A lot
Neither
of
did
times,
I.
burner accounts are rooted in some insecurity. We all know. We could talk about Kevin Durant in terms of that department, but Steph is not like KD in that way. I've never thought he would be. So,
Same.
I don't think this necessarily means that he has a burner account. Maybe someone who's managing his account just did that.
And look, he's a human being. There's no like rule. There's no ethical violation if you do have a Twitter burner. It's just
there are actually some ethical lines there.
How so?
Didn't Colangelo get fired for having a burner account?
I guess it depends on your position, right? I mean,
depends on what you're doing with the burner account.
Yeah. Because Colangelo is a personnel guy. I mean, and so when you're actually dictating, where players are going and doing, I suppose that is different. And plus, wasn't he like being really sensitive with his burner? I suppose the context of what you're publishing with your burner account is important too, because in Colangelo's case, I think he was like coming to the defense of his own decisions.
Well, a burner is inherently misleading, right? Which you can get into some ethical lines there. I mean,
yeah, that's true.
Not to be the ethics police, but I don't think anyone would want their employee having a burner account. It's not like something you strive for.
Oh, when you put it that way, yeah, I'm having second thoughts about the morality of a burner account. But you never see Steph replying to anything. You rarely see him liking, especially a tweet like that where it's just Malika Andrews and Waj discussing that crazy Kings Pacers trade yesterday. Let's shift gears there.
Trade ever, by the way.
The what?
Such an absurd trade on the Kings' part.
The worst thing. So I tweeted yesterday, and you can follow Conor Letourneau on Twitter at _Chron. CHRON is the second one. You can follow me on Twitter at DogSurfRoadshow and this program on Twitter at LockedOnDubs. I tweeted yesterday that there's no doubt now in my mind that the Kings are the Clippers of the 80s and 90s. They are that joke franchise where nothing they do is right. And I'm a firm believer that feces rolls from the top. So the ownership there, I think, should take a lot of crap for this. I mean, they're the ones who are oftentimes just greenlighting this. Vivek, there's video of him in the draft room a few years back. Maybe it was like 10 years or something when Chris Mullin was there. And, Chris is constantly trying to get that stain off his body, this stink and stench of the Kings. But, yeah, man, like, can you rationalize that? I mean, it's worth talking about. They're in the same division.
I mean, also, Tyrese Halliburton was a guy that I wrote a lot about in the draft. That was obviously the draft where we were all talking and writing about it for months and months because it kept getting pushed back. I personally thought the Warriors should take a hard look at him at number 2. I love him. I loved him going back to his Iowa State days, and he's done nothing but make good on my affinity for him. To me, he's a guy. He's only 21 years old.
Yeah,
second year of a rookie deal. He has all the makings of a bona fide franchise point guard for decade plus to come. You don't just walk away from that. Those guys don't come along every day, and you don't just give up on that, especially when he's still on a rookie deal. It's absurd. And Sabonis, good player, but I've heard people compare him to David Lee a little bit in terms of like the potentially empty stats type guy. I mean,
yes,
he's putting up numbers, but has it really helped the Pacers at all? And and obviously the other thing about this is that by bringing him in, you're creating more and more redundancies on your roster. Like you're preventing your other young guys like Bagley and some other guys from getting minutes. I mean, it creates an unnecessary logjam. And by the way, you're losing arguably your best player is 21 years old. It's just completely ridiculous. And I thought, that's an absolute coup for the Pacers. I was texting with a friend of mine yesterday who's from Indiana, is a big Pacers fan, and he was like, I can't believe the Kings did this. And I'm like, me neither, but they're the Kings, so maybe we shouldn't be too surprised. And you made a good point earlier. Like, one thing I've realized about covering the NBA is it's all about leadership. It's all about leadership. And if you look at the best run franchises, not just in the NBA, but in professional sports, and honestly in the corporate sector, in all businesses, because at the end of the day, NBA franchises are major businesses. It's all about the ownership and the leadership up top. And the Warriors obviously made a turn for the better when Joe Lacob's group took over. And everything goes back to that. And I agree with you that as long as Vivek owns the Kings, they're going nowhere. they have no chance to be relevant at all. I mean, the getting Halliburton was like the only smart move they've made, really smart move they've made in a while, outside of maybe Donovan Mitchell. And you
Or
just
Davion, yeah. But I
Davion,
follow.
my bad.
Who cares?
Um,
Yep.
and you just butcher yourself like that. It's ridiculous.
It absolutely is. You're right. I love the Davion Mitchell pick as well. But what are you thinking? I mean, and it's not just like the Halliburton part of it. Also, I know Buddy Hield maybe lost a little value, but I feel like you could have gotten a lot more for Buddy Hield in just a separate trade. I mean,
Yeah.
it's crazy. It is absolutely insane. And
Yeah,
there's
and
teams like
I feel like Buddy Hield, the market value was non-existent because everyone knew that they were trying to get rid of him for so long. And sometimes you can hold on to a guy too long. Like I think you're seeing that with Portland too. I'm from Portland. I grew up a Blazers fan. Now that I cover the NBA, I honestly have no affinity for any team, but
of course.
I obviously followed them a little closer, and my feeling on that was they could have gotten a lot more if they had traded him last year, before the collapse long, before all those things, and they held on to him too long.
Absolutely right, man. And when we come back, we're going to talk some more NBA trade because the deadline is coming up. I know the Warriors aren't expected to do much, if anything. The chatter when the whole Stephen Curry burner thing was kind of buzzing on Twitter for a day or so was you had fans wondering, like, wow, was he tweeting because maybe the Warriors were interested in pursuing someone from the Pacers, like a Miles Turner or something like that? Probably not happening, but who knows? We'll talk about that and so much more with Connor Letourneau. But first, let's talk about PrizePicks. All right, NBA fans, are you looking for a daily fantasy option for the NBA? Connor, are you looking for one?
Not really, but I'll say I am for the purposes of the draft.
Well, if you are, you need to try the award-winning app PrizePicks. PrizePicks is daily fantasy made easy. I love this, and we know you will too. It's super easy. You pick 2 to 5 players and an over-under on their projections. Like, for example, in tonight's game, I'm sure there's an over-under on Stephen Curry and maybe points. You name it. There is a wide variety of selections to choose from. Entries can be made in 60 seconds or less. It's that easy. PrizePicks is safe and offers fast withdrawals, which is always a huge bonus for me when it comes to any website like this. Use the award-winning app on both the App Store and Google Play. For a limited time, PrizePicks has an exclusive no-brainer of an offer for all of our users. Users get $50 for free if a player in your first PrizePicks entry scores just a single point, but you must use the code NBA. That's right. This is an exclusive offer available to Locked On fans. Sign up today and use the code NBA for $50 free if a player in your first PrizePick entry scores a single point. Again, just go to prizepicks.com for all that fantasy goodness. And we'll be back with more Locked On Dubs.
You are Locked On Warriors, your daily Golden State Warriors podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks for making Locked On Warriors your first listen. The NBA trade deadline is tomorrow at 3 p.m. Eastern, 12 Pacific, and the Locked On NBA podcast will be covering it live from 2 to 4 p.m. Join Kim Becker, John Corrales, and Locked On Fantasy Basketball host Josh Lloyd to get analysis of every blockbuster move. Subscribe to Locked On NBA YouTube and turn your notifications on so you know when they go live. Connor Letourneau joins me. You can follow him on Twitter at @con_cron. Let's talk about your Trailblazers for a second before we redirect back to the Warriors. I've never been a supporter of making trades for cap space, especially when you're a small market team, because it's so hard to get free agents. And that seems to be the only logic outside of acquiring Josh Hart, who I do like, but I don't know if it was worth giving up CJ McCollum for him. The Blazers are your team. I would love to know how you feel about these Blazers trades, because they've been very active.
Team. They used to be my team.
Yeah, right.
But no, I know what you're saying, and the thing about it is, what they're trying to do is honestly impossible. They're in an incredibly difficult position, because the truth is, what they should do is they should just start over. They should just press reset, blow it up, and rebuild. That's what they should do. But they can't really do that because they can't get rid of Lillard. I mean, there's something to be said for an all-star who's still in his prime, a perennial all-star who's probably the best player in franchise history who wants to be there. And there's a lot of emotional elements to that. And I understand why they feel like they can't let go of him. I would probably feel the same way, especially since Lillard, despite everything, still wants to be there.
Yeah.
But that leaves them in this strange sort of limbo because it's like you clearly need to rebuild, but you can't you can't do a full rebuild when you still have Lillard. So they're trying to rebuild on the fly with an injured superstar, which is literally impossible.
Yeah.
And I think it's unfortunate. There's part of me that wishes Lillard was like asking for a trade out because it would just make things easier on everyone. As tough as that would be to see for Blazers fans, but Lillard, give him credit, he's incredibly loyal and wants to see this thing through. But the truth is, what's going to happen is they're squandering the rest of his prime, and he's never going to win anything ever again.
That's I know. First of all, you said the greatest Blazer ever. I do want to. So I'm thinking Clyde Drexler. What's up?
He's better than Clyde Drexler.
And Bill Walton, who won the last
championship
Walton's
not
for him.
Even in the conversation.
All right.
Because he wasn't good enough. He wasn't good long enough.
Gotcha. I said no.
He had those serious health problems, and he at his peak he was as good as anyone.
Yes.
But he just wasn't good long enough. It really is a debate between Drexler and Lillard, and if you look at the numbers, very, very even in a lot of respects. But I think when it's all said and done, Lillard will go down as the greatest Blazer of all time.
That's crazy. And look, I have nothing but respect for his loyalty. I feel like there's just not enough of that in the NBA and pro sports today, that's a huge reason why I constantly have love for Steph and Clay and Dre. I mean, just the fact that the Warriors could have those three for their entire careers, although that is a discussion for another day, because at some point with all these rising stars on the roster, there's going to be some money issues, and that's for another show. But I can't really admire his loyalty enough. I actually interviewed, I'm going to plug the other podcast I do, the Rick Barry Show, real quick. I interviewed Gary Payton yesterday and brought up the fact that how him and Dame Lillard, despite the fact they played for Warriors rivals in the Pacific Northwest, they're revered just because they're Oakland boys and they constantly come back. Gary Payton's actually living here now. Dame always makes appearances in Oakland.
Lincoln, yeah.
It is. It's very cool, man. So props to Dame for that, and best of luck with him staying there. You wrote a great piece recently. Let's shift gears back to the Warriors, and thank you everyone listening for being patient with us while we talk about other teams and players. You wrote a fantastic piece about a player that's really been probably the most controversial, the most divisive on the Warriors this year, and he's done nothing wrong. He just is not healing properly, and that's James Wiseman. But he's in Utah with the team right now. Tell us what's going on and what your article was about yesterday, because it was fantastic news.
I think you're overhyping the article.
Oh, no.
Yeah, he had his first contact scrimmage yesterday in Salt Lake City. The thing that was interesting about that was that, we all interviewed Steve, and right after practice, he made no mention of this. And then next thing we know, James Wiseman's walking out there and beginning a contact scrimmage.
Steve has been straight with you guys. He did say he's just done talking about it. So
yeah. Well, and we also didn't talk about it because we've been asking every day, and I think all of us kind of are tired of asking about it.
Yeah.
So nothing against him for not bringing it up. It's not that he's being evasive or anything. It just didn't come up. And and then he just walks out there and is beginning contact work. It was a short. It was like 15 minutes, 3-on-3 scrimmage, and it came out well. That's a huge milestone when you consider the journey he's been on. That he's 10 months removed now from that knee surgery in mid-April, and he until this point had zero contact work, which is really unfortunate when you consider the initial timeline for him and the fact that he hasn't even had contact work, meaning he's still a bit away from actually being cleared for a game.
Right.
It's been a worst case scenario in terms of his rehab. And he's kind of at a crucial period, I think, because it's getting to the point now where if he can't be cleared for a game soon, what's even the point of playing him at all this season? It might get to a point in the next month or so where the Warriors have to ask themselves, do we just pull the plug on the season? Because if he can't get at least a month in before the playoffs, I'm not sure it's worth it. He he needs lower stakes reps in regular season games for it to be worth it, in my opinion. Because the truth is, I know a lot of people talk about their lack of depth at the center position, and that's all fair. But with all that being said, he's not playing in the playoffs. There's just no way, because he's not going to have enough reps under him to build any real synergy or cohesion with the current roster.
Right.
And, he showed as a rookie last season that he wasn't ready to help a winning team or really an NBA team. He's
right.
got all the talent in the world, but he still has to figure out how to play in the Warriors system. And I'm just not sure he's not going to have enough time to figure that out. He's my biggest issue with Wiseman is not his talent. It's not his ability. I think he has all-star talent.
Mm-hmm.
I just don't love his fit with the Warriors.
Hmm.
He's not the type of center the Warriors like in that system. They're at their best when they have a Kevon. There's a reason why Kevon has been such a valuable piece this season, because they're at their best when they have a big like that who plays sound fundamental defense, positional defense, team defense.
Yes.
Who can be an offensive fulcrum, who can kick out to open shooters, who can execute the dribble handoffs, who can do all the little things, the screens, and then occasionally throw down a putback dunk, But they're not, the way their system is built, the center is not going to ever be a go-to option offensively.
Right.
And Wiseman's at his best in high screen pick and roll type situations. He has not shown that he has a high level basketball IQ. He has not shown that he has a great feel for the game, which is the most important part of the Warriors system.
You're absolutely right.
You need to know where to move in different situations. You need to read and react. You need to make judgment calls in a split second. And I'm not sure that's something he can suddenly develop. I think that's an inherent thing. And I hope things work out for James. He's incredibly talented. He's a great guy. But there's part of me that thinks that if his NBA career ends up working out and he ends up living up to all the hype, it probably won't be with the Warriors.
Interesting.
That's my personal opinion.
Interesting. Those attributes you mentioned at the end are a huge reason why things do seem to be working out with Jonathan Kuminga. He just has this inherent ability to just pick up the nuance of NBA basketball, and his skill set is just insane. I mean, just seeing him in the post, like putting up left-handed layups, like it's natural.
About this season, because there's been so many interesting storylines this season with Steph's record and Clay's return and all that. But I'll be honest, my favorite thing about this season has been Kuminga.
Easily.
He's just so fun, man.
Easily. A close second is Jordan Poole. I think Jordan Poole is a close second just because we're seeing him now do it consistently, which we weren't seeing early on, and he's starting to kind of string it together on a night-by-night basis. When we come back, we'll obviously talk a lot more about the Warriors. I want to have a few more questions about Wiseman. You just dropped a lot of interesting information there and some great insights. But first, let's talk about Built Bar. Dieter loves these things. I can't remember, Connor, if you like them too. Have you ever had a Built Bar?
I've had a couple because Wes Goldberg, your predecessor, was obsessed with them. And he would bring them on the road. And when we were in some random media room in Salt Lake City or Oklahoma City or something, he would hand me one to so I didn't pass out from writing for 2 hours. And they're good, man. They're good.
That's what everyone says. I'm still waiting for my shipment. They might have actually come to another address. I can't wait to try these because Wes swears by them. You've tried them. You love them. Dieter loves them. Speaking of Wes, by the way, this has been a fun discussion topic with Dieter. Dude, Wes dropped this crazy bomb on Twitter last week announcing that Tom Brady was going to sign a one-day contract with the Patriots to end his career. Dieter is kind of taking the "I'll believe it when I see it" approach. Dude, Wes Goldberg is a credentialed journalist.
Wes did issue a retraction later.
Oh no, he did?
Yeah.
What was your retraction? I have not seen this. What was it?
He said that he was premature in reporting that.
Oh no, Wes.
And look, I love Wes to death.
Same.
I'm not. It happens to us. Sometimes we jump the gun. I've done it before. Very legitimate reporters have done it. Don't hold it against him. He's a human being, and it happens. So
it does. Look, man, and I always tell I teach journalism, and I tell every skeptic of journalists and those morons who keep throwing out fake news. Look, man, every single person on this planet is a human being. We're all prone to making mistakes. and look at the track record before you decide and judge an individual's credibility. So yeah, Wes might have made a mistake there on Twitter, but I guarantee he's got probably a 99.9% success rate in terms of accurate reporting. So, but that's interesting. So he retracted, and we'll see what happens. I'm kind of holding out hope still that Tom plays for the Niners, dude. That's my little side wish. But we're talking about Built Bar again, which is, again, a yummy treat. Wes Goldberg loves these things. Dieter loves these things. Connor Letourneau loves these things. They got a new flavor called Puffs, which are the first ever protein-infused marshmallow protein bar. They're fluffy. They're marshmallowy. They're not just a protein bar. They're a treat that's covered in 100% real chocolate. All these protein bars are low calorie and high protein, just 130 calories per bar, only an eighth of the sugar, fraction of the carbs, yet 17 grams of protein on average for each bar. All you got to do is go to built.com, use the promo code LOCKED15 and get 15% off your order. Again, the promo code is LOCKED15 for 15% off at built.com.
You are Locked On Warriors, your daily Golden State Warriors podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks for making Locked On Warriors your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get podcasts. He's Connor Letourneau. You can follow him on Twitter at Con, C-O-N _Cron, C-H-R-O-N. The James Wiseman stuff is fascinating. First, I want to elaborate just for a second, just because I've actually been reading a lot about what contact means in terms of like a player going through contact drills and exercises before he can actually come back. And what medical professionals have written, from what I've researched, is that they need to make the team needs to make sure he can actually make physical contact with that knee and come out of that okay. Is that to the best of your interpretation as well? What that means?
Basically, yeah. That's basically the definition. I know it's, the semantics are kind of tough sometimes. Like scrimmage, but it was non-contact. What's that mean? Like, how do you scrimmage with no contact? Yeah, it's a lot to navigate there.
Yeah, and then here's what I'll say about Wiseman, just because I hear what you're saying about the fit and how Looney's a lot better. Every single, whatever you call an expert, right? In this case, we'll talk about former NBA bigs and players who have evaluated him. It's universal. I've never heard one person say, I don't know if Wiseman has the skills for it. So that gives me encouragement. And I've heard one person say he's a combination of Durant and Giannis. If that's what he ends up being, I think he could fit in this system. But you're right. If he ends up being just a traditional center, then maybe that could be.
Well, here's the thing: for the Warriors to get the most out of him, they're going to have to change their system. Last season they were asking him to fit their system, and he couldn't do it. And so when he started kind of coming into his own and playing better was when Steve started calling more high screen pick and rolls and things like that. And so I think there's a world where they can make it work, but Steve's going to have to change and evolve, and everyone around them is going to have to change and evolve. And I don't think it's fair to ask Wiseman to change because, like I said, I just don't think you suddenly become a great passer when you've never been one in your whole career. And so it's going to be a really fascinating thing to monitor next season and going forward, how they kind of thread that needle, because they obviously really struggled with it last season. Mm-hmm. And I think they learned a lot from that, and they're handling Kuminga and on a lesser level, Moody's development far better. But I also think it helps that both of those guys are better fits for the system.
Yeah, I hear. And Moody especially, man. I've been raving about him. He's finally starting to show, all the promise that we've been waiting for, and those stints of the G League are incredible. With Wiseman, I do think he could play in the playoffs if, and this is a huge if the first round opponent is, let's say, the Pelicans, or let's say it's, as crazy as this sounds, could be the Kings, right? Because they're only a game and a half out of the play-in.
Blowing teams out, yeah. But so, I just don't think you're giving them high-stakes minutes in the playoffs. Right?
Yeah. But I exactly. If they play a relatively weaker opponent like that in the first round, if they're playing like the Lakers or like the Timberwolves, I don't know if you could fit.
I would rather play Kuminga at the 5 than play Wiseman at the 5. And,
Well, let's lead to that then. And Dieter agrees with me on that, and he's going to be joining me again tomorrow. Like, he loves Kuminga at the 5. My only hesitation for Kuminga at the 5 is I just don't want this kid to be beaten down too soon. I mean, I don't know if I want him squaring up against guys who outweigh him by 50, 70 pounds.
He's strong
like
as hell, though, man.
he is.
He's
Yeah.
strong as hell, and he's a freak athlete, and that helps a lot.
Yeah, he is. Yeah, he is. So, sorry.
So I actually did a piece on this yesterday, and I think it's been a little bit of a silver lining. One of actually several silver linings of Draymond's absence is you're seeing they're able to tinker with things a little bit more and see, different parts of different guys' games. And I think that they're seeing that Kuminga can be a real option for them at the 5. And it's another reason why they don't feel a need to go out and get another big man. I personally think there's more value in giving Kuminga occasional minutes at the 5 and seeing what he can do than going out and getting like an Alex Len or a Tristan Thompson.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying.
For the long-term outlook of the franchise, what means more to you?
Yeah, I don't want Alex Len for the record. Tristan Thompson, Dieter is totally on board. But the whole problem with adding another big is you're going to have to cut someone. And I don't know who you cut. That's why I don't think they're going to do that. What do you think?
Tristan Thompson, you mean the guy who Draymond Green punched out at a bar a couple years ago? That guy?
What is it? Do you know what the story happened there, by the way? To shift the gears?
That's a good idea for locker room chemistry when you're
No. I'm with you. I'm not a huge proponent of Tristan Thompson. I could see the value in that he's a natural center and he's a big who could take up 10, 15 minutes a night if you need it. Fantastic, sure. and he could block shots. He's actually got a decent post game.
That culture stuff, that chemistry stuff matters, man.
No, I'm with you. Agreed.
He's not worth the risk there.
Totally agree. By the way, are you confirming right now? Because I've always heard that it was Tristan who punched Draymond. You're saying that Draymond in that 2016 scuffle punched Tristan?
I thought they punched each other, but
maybe. I never get a clear story on that.
If I'm inaccurate, I apologize. It's been a couple years, but they did get into a scuffle.
They did. Yeah, I can't remember what year either. It might have been 2017.
Draymond does not like Tristan Thompson.
Interesting.
I think he thinks he's a little phony. Anyone who watched Keeping Up with the Kardashians probably agrees that he's a little phony.
I'm with you, man. I don't like anyone who dates the Kardashians. To me, that's a flag.
Also, someone who cheats on the Kardashians, or just cheats all the time.
Speaking of ethics and morals, from earlier, one thing no one is talking about, by the way, about the whole Ben Simmons fiasco. Anybody who's listening to this who has gone through a relationship breakup knows how devastating that is emotionally. At least could be, right? It certainly destroyed me on numerous occasions. And if I'm not mistaken, Ben Simmons lost his girlfriend, Kendall Jenner, to Devin Booker.
Dude, we're like drifting into.
Oh, we are. I'll bring it back. I'm going to bring it back in a second.
We're going to get back to be on.
TMZ Sports. Oh no, we're already there, dude. Well, I'll bring us back on the straight lane again real fast. But don't you think that could play a part in someone Simmons is technically saying he has mental issues. He texted Shaq last week, and whatever he told Shaquille O'Neal clearly reverberated with him because he decided to no longer criticize Ben Simmons. And I wonder if it's something as simple as that. He's like, dude, I'm just messed up. I lost my girl to a guy who's on TV every night. I got to play against this guy at some point. I want to kill him. I'm totally projecting, but could be.
Bottom line is everyone has stuff they're going through that affects them in the workplace. I've had my personal things that have definitely affected my work at different times. And I ask everyone out there to just employ some empathy for, yes, they're millionaire athletes. And I've heard a lot of people say, oh, but they're millionaires. Who cares? And it's like, yeah, but they're still people. Just because you make millions does not mean you don't have a heart, doesn't mean you don't get depressed or have problems,
True.
Sometimes you have more problems,
Absolutely.
And I just implore everyone to, whenever they're judging other people, to put themselves in other people's shoes and have some empathy, because we don't know what he's going through. We can speculate all we want, but he's obviously going through something, and who are we to judge?
Exactly, yeah. Do you think that trade's going to happen? The trade deadline is tomorrow. It seems like an obvious trade, which is probably why it's not going to happen. But it seems to work out for both teams. Harden to Philly, Ben Simmons to Brooklyn. I'm hearing Seth Curry is a huge holdup in this deal. What do you think? Anything's going to happen there?
Probably not. No.
Here's a question. Here's a hypothetical I'm going to ask you, and then I'll bring it back on the straight and narrow to wrap the show up because you probably have to go as well. Would you make this Warriors trade? And Kevin Dana was completely stumped when I proposed this on Monday. Would you trade Andrew Wiggins and Jonathan Kuminga for Kevin Durant.
I listened to every single episode. And by the way, I love Kevin Durant as a guest. I've had him on my old podcast. I love him to death. Anytime I have a G League question, I hit him up.
He's amazing.
A true expert. I love that question. And so it's Jonathan Kuminga and Wiggins for Kevin Durant. Honestly, I wouldn't do it.
Okay.
I wouldn't do it.
I think the majority of Dub Nation wouldn't either. Yeah.
For several reasons. I honestly wouldn't trade Kuminga for almost anything.
Anything. I'm with you, man. I'm with you.
We were talking about earlier with Halliburton. You just don't walk away from a young stud like that. You just don't do it. So when he's on a rookie deal, and the thing is, Kuminga has far more upside than even Halliburton does. Because Kuminga's, I got asked in my mailbag this week, what's the ceiling for Moses Moody and Kuminga?
What'd you say?
What I said, I compared Moody to Robert Covington. I think that Moody can be kind of like a 3-and-D, really solid, helpful rotation player at a high level for a long time, a la like a Robert Covington. Maybe even a little bit better version of Robert Covington. But in terms of Kuminga, there literally is no ceiling.
None.
His potential is limitless. Perennial all-star, one of the best two-way players in the league, Hall of Famer. I'm not saying he will be Hall of Famer, but
I know. I hear you, man. I hear you.
And you just don't mess with that. You don't mess with that. And
nope.
He's gotten significantly better throughout his rookie year, which bodes well. He's taking direction well. He's playing harder than he ever's played. He seems to have a high basketball IQ. You just don't mess with that.
Nope.
And on top of that, Wiggins is, yes, you can joke about him being an all-star starter, but he's an all-star starter.
He is an all-star. He is. Yes, he's earned it.
He's a phenomenal fit, not just from an X's and O's standpoint, but from a cultural standpoint.
Yep.
Honestly, I know he didn't have the greatest reputation when the Warriors traded for him, but I've gotten to know him, and I have nothing but positive things to say about him as a person. He's incredibly humble, low key, and can't say that many nice things about Kevin Durant, to be honest with you. So.
And the reason why I mentioned that hypothetical trade is because that's ultimately what the Kevin Durant sign and trade ended up being, was for Wiggins and Kuminga, and I think it's safe to say the Warriors won that deal. It's crazy.
Man, Bob Myers, when you look at his body of work and all the things that he had to do to put this roster together, he's brilliant. I should just stop criticizing the guy, because I was really down on his offseason last offseason.
Same.
And I was like, how do you not use the mid-level, blah, blah, blah. He obviously knows a lot more than I do. He can see the forest of the trees, or whatever that saying is. And I give him a lot of credit. I mean, what he's done with this roster has been absolutely incredible. They have, in my opinion, no holes. I know you want them to go out and get Paul Millsap. I do not want them.
Not anymore. At this point, I think it's moot at this point. Because here's the thing, man. It took me a while. I had to actually do extensive research. I had Janie McCauley on a couple weeks ago. I didn't realize that the Warriors there was no option except to cut a player. I thought I honestly thought the disabled exception.
One thing I've heard a lot from people is cut Chiozza, and it's but he's a two-way contract player. You have to cut someone off the 15-man roster.
Yes.
And there's literally and they're all guaranteed deals. You've picked up all their deals. So,
yeah, and you could do it. I mean, you could cut someone and add someone else legally. But
that would be open to cutting would be Bielitsa.
Yeah.
But I even don't think it's worth cutting him when you factor in the financial repercussions and who they would get. It's just, you don't fix something that's not broken. It's not broken. They've won 9 in a row without Draymond. They're good. Just be happy, Warriors fans. Life is good.
And again, my whole issue with wanting size is I mean, I don't think it's a coincidence that both Draymond and Bielitsa have been missing extensive time because of back injuries. I mean, they're both constantly battling much bigger human beings. I mean, it's a matter of physics there. There's only so much your body can take, and that's the only reason why Kuminga concerns me at the 5 a little bit. I just don't want to see him beaten up like that. But I also can see him totally dominating, and you're right. He's so athletic. He's so naturally strong. And that's the only reason why I want them to get another big, is because I just don't want the current bigs to be worn down and beaten up by the time the playoffs start. And that'll lead us to the final discussion topic, which is Kevon Looney. He was listed as questionable for tonight's game. He has been their Iron Man. I mean, he's played in every game this season. The Warriors are underdogs tonight, I believe, by 2 points. The over-under is 221.5. Is Looney going to play? What have you heard from that?
I have no idea.
Okay.
came out on the injury report after we talked to everyone yesterday at practice, so we should know more in a few hours when we talk to Steve. But my guess would be that if there's any doubt at all that he wouldn't play, I mean, he's played every single game this season. If nothing else, just give him a rest night. I mean, he's been doing so much heavy lifting. He's been one of the most important players
easily
to the team this season. I mean, we don't talk about him enough. He's been absolutely incredible on both sides of the ball in terms of just giving the Warriors exactly what they need from him. He's been the absolute perfect center for this system, and just give him a night off. And I believe Gobert's not playing, which is good because Kuminga very well might be their starting center tonight. And
I was going to ask that. Who do you think is going to be starting at the 5? Like,
Kuminga.
is it not JTA, huh?
I mean, they could do either. JTA started at center. I think my guess is that they would do Kuminga just because they want to see more and more of him at that spot, and he's not going to have to contend with Gobert. If he was going up against Gobert, it'd probably be JTA. Steve said we don't want Kuminga guarding like Joel Embiid type guys, and I'm guessing even though he's not as good offensively, Gobert would fall into that same category. But yeah, I think tonight will be fun to see him play extended minutes at the 5 potentially. And look, Looney deserves all the rest of the world. Give the guy a break, man. He's like been low key one of the most important players of this team. And I got a question in my mailbag the other day, like reminding me that he's going to be a free agent this summer.
Yeah. If we weren't talking for 41 minutes, I would have brought that up today, but that's going to be for another show.
Bottom line, can I real quickly just say they have to resign him.
They have to.
Whatever it takes.
Whatever money you save this year, Joe.
You sign him, and you have to sign Poole to an extension.
Have to. No, 100% with you. And again, this is where I really hope the money that Joe saved from not using that mid-level exception this year is going toward those extensions for Looney and for Jordan Poole. That's what I'm hoping, because you're absolutely right. You can follow Connor Letourneau on Twitter at CON_CHRON, ConCron. He'll be covering the game tonight, the Warriors and the Jazz. My man, it's always a pleasure, dude. I hope to make this a very regular thing. For the people listening, by the way, so this show has finally been settled in terms of the arrangement. It's been an up and down, uncertain 2 months, but I'm going to be here 5 days a week. It is now official. The deal is finally done. Dieter will be here 3 days a week. So those other 2 days a week, I would love you, man, as much as you're available. Anytime you're available, you're coming on with me. I'll leave that up to you.
Yeah, I mean, I'm getting back off the beat in a couple weeks here, but I'll still be writing a lot about the Warriors and dialed in with what's going on, and I'm happy to come on and talk about it.
Love it, man. I know the fans love it, so that's great news. And for everyone else, thank you so much for listening and making Locked On Warriors your first listen every day. And again, Dieter's back with me tomorrow and Friday. We're doing some trade deadline talk. We're going to recap the Jazz game. And now make your second listen, Locked On Bets, your daily one-stop shop for all your gambling needs. Locked On Bets, hosted by your boy Q, with expert analysis and insight from Lee Sterling. It's free and available wherever you get podcasts. Thanks again, Connor. Thanks, everyone, and we'll see you tomorrow. Later.